We have successfully launched another episode of Lunch with Randy and Teddy. Welcome, folks. And we've got a special guest today, and we also have a special co-host. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But again, Lunch with Randy and Teddy comes at you every Wednesday, noon to 1. We bring guests from all different sectors of whether it's business or education and job hunting and so forth, and try to learn some things and have a little fun along the way. Today's no exception. So first, Randy Wooden, Goodwill Industries, Northwest North Carolina, director for our professional center, based in Winston. I have clients all over, but mostly here in the Triad and specifically in the Winston area. We're free, happy to help. If you or maybe somebody you know is in a job search, find me on LinkedIn, and happy to get you on the calendar. So enough about me, but the show, we have a lot of fun every week. Normally Teddy's here, but you can see he's playing hooky today. I think he's out of state. So we can do and say in this place, what is that? What was that? Tom Cruise, the movie where he's sliding across in his socks and his underwear and the
Risky Business.
Risky Business. There you go. We're not going to do that today, but we could. Anyway, Teddy's not here. Special co-host today, Catherine Perry, Leadership Winston. Catherine, why don't you explain a little bit about what you do over there?
I sure will. So yes, I am not Teddy Burriss. We might look just a little different. I'm the executive director of Leadership Winston-Salem, which is a community leadership development organization that ushers community leaders through a 9-month program for flagship, or a 6-evening program for our Insight program to connect, educate, and energize leaders to serve and improve the community. Randy is an alum of the class of 22. And Mark is an Insight alum of the class of 19, I think, or in that area, pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I think it was 18. Yeah.
I feel pretty good that I got anywhere close with that one, Mark. I should have probably looked that up beforehand. But so that's what I spend the bulk of my time doing, is running around Leadership Winston-Salem and making good things happen in the community.
Good deal. Yeah, I'm now seeing I can share like I usually do with our folks. So good deal. I'm looking at on my Facebook. So yeah, now you've been at that for a good long time, but leadership's been around since the 80s, I think, right? So there are a lot of folks like
on our 40th anniversary actually in 2024. So that's a huge mile marker for us.
Very cool. Well, Catherine's going to keep an eye on the chat area. If you've got comments or questions for Mark Owens, our special guest today, go put them in the chat, and she'll keep an eye on that and work it in where appropriate. But back by popular demand, Mark Owens. Mark is the executive director, or president, CEO, I guess I should say, of Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. And Mark, you've been on the show a couple of times. Back again for our annual check-up or check-in with you to see what's going on. So, Mark, if you would, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more for the folks checking us out today?
Sure. Thank you, Randy. And excited to have Catherine with us today. Thanks for inviting me back. This is the third time I've been on the show, so I guess we're doing it once a year now or so. So I'm excited to be able to do that. As Randy mentioned, my name is Mark Owens, President CEO here at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. Catherine and I know when I was in Insight, because we moved here in December of 2017 from the upstate of South Carolina. And so one of the first things we did, of course, is get involved with leadership, and went through the Insight program. In 2018, my wife and I, Melody, moved here with our then 4-month-old, who is now almost 6. So that's also how I know how long we've been here, because he's growing up and running around and wearing me out for sure. But Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., for those that may not know, is a combination of the Chamber of Commerce as well as the economic development recruitment entities. So we do both of those combined. Our organization, a little older than Winston Leadership. We are now 138 years old. So we have been around for a long time, and really appreciate our new name and new direction, what we're working on to try to make our community the best place possible and the best economic environment in the country.
Yeah. And you've moved into some new digs over there, and I guess what it looks like maybe some upfitting is going on, or where are you these days?
Let me see if I can do this right. As you see here, the painting picture is still on the wall. It hasn't even been hung. We just moved in to the 525 at Vine building here in Innovation Quarter. We are co-located with Forsyth Tech and their wonderful workforce development team and small business center. which they do a great job. And for us to be located in the same space has a lot of synergy and really brings us together in a way. So when a company or a business wants to talk about talent and they want to talk about workforce development or what it's like to be here and what's your partnership like with the community college, we're literally in the same office with them together. But yes, we're outfitting our space. So we haven't even hung stuff up because it's going to come right back down in the next couple of weeks. So I apologize. It's propped up in the corner there. But yeah, we love being here in Innovation Quarter. But we also have a presence in Winston Starts. We have a desk space in Winston Starts. And we're also, out and about in the community as much as possible. So it's a fun place to be.
It is. Yeah. And I was out there about a month or so ago. So lots of good stuff happening, and, takes time to get everything the way you need to have it set up. So I hope that goes by quickly and back at it. So I always ask the why question. So Mark, this is not the first time I've asked it, but I always ask that of our guests. There's either, I don't know, a single event or a series of events or something that says, you know what, this is the kind of work I really enjoy doing. I derive a lot of fulfillment from it. Help us understand your why.
Yeah, sure. And Randy and Catherine, I'll be a little longer answer on the why and give a little backstory to it as well. Chamber of Commerce, Business Association, economic development is something I didn't seek out necessarily. It started, I played college soccer, and one of the assistant coaches was the CEO of the local Chamber of Commerce and had me come intern during the summer. And I kind of fell in love with the idea of getting to know different businesses and get to meet with different people. I mean, and one day you can meet with a person who works from home and is in a startup or a retail and a large manufacturer all in the same day. And I love that interesting combination of where our economy comes together within a community. But what I really, really kind of gravitated towards, and the real reason for why I like to do this and feel a little bit as a calling to do it is, when a business has a ribbon cutting, or when a company decides, hey, we're going to move there, or we're going to expand and add 20 new jobs, every one of those situations is a family and a life that's impacted, right? Just like when you go through and coach people in their job search, or they're going through leadership, like that could be changing the direction of an entire family and their kids' direction. And what that generationally could do is those job opportunities provide so many different avenues of mobility, economic mobility, and change in a positive way that's good for the community. So yeah, it's great to have goals with numbers. Hey, we want to create 500 new jobs a year. That's a great number. But when you think about it as 500 people that are impacted positively by that's the why. That's what gets you up every morning to say, we want to make a difference and make Winston-Salem the best place to live and grow a business that we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just the 500 that have a job, but those that depend on those 500.
Right.
So
right.
And they spend money locally. And so it has a cascading effect, I think. So good stuff. Lots to unpack today. Again, if you have a comment or question for Mark Owens, put it in the chat area and we'll try to work those in as we go. So let's start first off by talent attraction. All businesses have challenges finding people and retaining them and so forth. So help us understand how you go about that. And this is not just specific to your organization. It's talking about businesses coming here or that are here and expanding. What are some tactics? What are you seeing as far as the trends go with talent acquisition?
Whew, that's a big one. I think, specifically since the pandemic as well, when it comes to what a business is looking for, whether they're already here or whether they're trying to move here, it used to always be kind of land and incentives number one and talent number two. They are even if talent's not number one and land number two. It's really close. They're probably 1A and 1B. And we look at talent in a lot of different ways. We look at attracting talent, but you also have to grow your own talent and develop your own talent. So I think this question is great to have Catherine here too. So we work with, I think Terry Cummings may be on the call. She's our VP of Talent and Workforce at Greater Winston-Salem Inc. She works with our organizations and community businesses and partners starting as early as fourth grade in our school system. We start developing a talent pipeline. And so everything we talk about is talent pipeline related from fourth grade all the way up to retirement and exiting the workforce. So we try to really focus, number one, on creating a talent pool that's already here. Once you have that talent pool that's here and population growth, you got to develop those leaders through education, through leadership development, through Leadership Winston-Salem, and invest in those people just like you invest in technology. And I would say more than you invest in anything else in your business, investing in people is the best investment you're going to do. But we also realize that companies that have specific needs have to also look outside of the community that's already here and try to attract and recruit talent. So we do that, Randy, in a lot of different ways. Predominantly, we try to use visual elements in marketing. We spend significant money marketing why to live in Winston-Salem outside of the community. We use social media, we use digital advertising. We're very targeted of age groups and demographics that we want to bring in. The demographic is the working age individual, anybody that can look to move to Winston-Salem and is engaged in the workforce. One of the alarming kind of challenges that we watch is workforce participation rates. And Forsyth County lags behind Mecklenburg and Wake County. And maybe kind of as you would think, but it lags a little further by about 6-7% in terms of workforce participation. So that means out of our total residents, we're a little bit older, but we also have people that have exited the workforce for whatever reason that may be. So that goes back to that pipeline too. Just think of that water line that has leaks. You don't want any leaks in that pipeline of talent. And
I think Mark froze up. Catherine, is he frozen on?
He's frozen on my screen too.
Yeah. Interesting. He was talking about the talent attraction in the pipeline. So maybe, I don't know if we can, if Mark's still on the call or not, but Catherine, it could just be you and me for a little while until there he goes.
Here he comes back. So now we have two Marks. This is
magic. Live TV or whatever. We're on TV. I guess we're on Zoom.
It just shut down. So I don't know what just happened. So
Mark, do you see the other image of you on the screen?
It's his twin.
Now it's just
his evil twin brother. Yeah, there you go. All right, so we're back. Good deal.
You know what that means? I need to change my password. Is probably what that means. So somebody that got nerve-wracking. I apologize.
Yeah. So you were talking about the pipeline.
Yeah, the pipeline, just
leak in the pipe, and
yeah, we want to make sure that we don't have people exiting the workforce, and that's an area that we are a little concerned about in Forsyth County. And so we got to find ways to have re-entry into the workforce and get people back engaged, whether they left to be a full-time teacher when the schools were closed and didn't come back to the workforce, or there are other issues that be happening. Think of Goodwill and some of the great work you do, Randy, and your team do there of re-engaging people that have had some challenges in their professional and personal lives and getting them back in the workforce. Those are all crucial and key areas of talent attainment and attraction. But specifically back to the recruiting, we really talk about Winston-Salem as an affordable and high value place to live. When you compare it to some of the cities like obviously Charlotte and Raleigh, but even Greensboro, Chattanooga, Greenville, South Carolina, Birmingham, Alabama, Knoxville, Tennessee, Columbia, Charleston, South Carolina, anywhere in the region kind of thing, we're pretty affordable. Yeah, it still can be expensive in different parts, and there's been inflation and just the economy as it is. But from a per dollar standpoint, your dollar can go further in Winston-Salem than it can go in a lot of other cities of our similar size in the Southeast. So we're starting to see more people that are looking to kind of settle in, figure out their next stage, put their roots down. Our average age in Forsyth County is 38 years old. So you think about people that are in that 26, 27-year-old time frame. We're really good at attracting that age group so that we can get them to come here and make decisions based off of the value of their dollar and get to a lot of different places. So it's really a great spot to be.
Yeah, and I've had a number of clients, to your point, who have been, for a variety of reasons, out of the workforce, or maybe have cobbled together some home, maybe some delivery driving kind of thing just to piece together something, but for a variety of reasons have been out of the mainstream workforce for a while. And whether it's age issues or they haven't worked in a little while, there's some concerns there. So they're looking to re-engage. I wonder too, also about, I don't know what the word, I'll call it flight. So we have a lot of good schools in North Carolina, but do students, when they graduate, they want to move to a big city kind of thing? How do we look to retain those folks? Are we doing a better job of that these days versus a generation ago? Help us understand that.
Yeah, I think, Catherine, I saw it come in the chat too, that kind of conversation. Yeah. I will just say this, we're really fortunate. We have 6 colleges and universities, right? We have Wake Forest University, we have Winston-Salem State, UNCSA, Salem College for SciTech, and Carolina University. So 6 unique, distinct colleges and universities that have different population of their students, right? So, for example, Winston-Salem State, their annual economic impact study says that they produce over $420 million and 8,389 jobs a year as their economic impact. So Winston-Salem State is one of the best as it relates to one of those traditional 4-year institutions that have a stickiness factor of their students staying in the region. For SciTech, obviously has the best because those are normally students that are in different stages in life or are residents of the community already. So they're staying. A school like UNCSA, Salem College, and Wake Forest are recruiting from across the country. So Wake Forest, we work with pretty extensively on this. Their students are coming from all over. So they're here. They may go back to where they live, and where they live could be anywhere. And so we do lose a lot of the Wake Forest students in that graduation to bigger cities. Our goal is to maintain some contact and stickiness with them. So the alumni office, we get to put some Winston-Salem material in some of the alumni newsletters and things that go out. In that way, we are able to stay in touch with those students so that when they're ready to start making that career choice, we kind of say, go to Charlotte, go to DC, New York, whatever you go do for your grad school start. But when you're ready to get serious about your career, come back to Winston-Salem. That's kind of our message point. UNCSA, Salem College, and Wake, with their recruitment, as I said, those students go a lot of different places. What is interesting is we hired a Wake student to do a survey of her fellow kind of graduating class on why would you not want to stay in Winston-Salem? And it is, hey, I need, job opportunities, or I want a big city lifestyle for a little bit. I've been here. But we also heard, and this is just a quick example, that they said, Winston-Salem's not safe. And so we said, okay, well, where do you want to move? And they're like, Chicago or DC. And we're like, hold on a second. So the perception is that, yes, Winston-Salem needs to always be safer, but we're much safer than Chicago or DC or some other cities. But what we learned was when there's an issue in the community, Wake students were getting text alerts to their phone of, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened. And so all they were doing is picking up their phones and seeing negative news about the community at all times. So a great partner in the president's office that we went to said, hey, we can change that. There's some laws that say we have to do certain alerts that are in proximity. But we also now send out text, hey, here's what's going on this weekend. Here's concerts happening. Here's a new restaurant that opened. Check out these shops that have opened. So it's now engaging in that student population in a different way. And we've got some really great leadership at those other universities like Chancellor Cole at UNCSA and Summer McGee at Salem College that are also engaging their students in a new and interactive way. And I think that's going to be really helpful.
Good deal. And Catherine, I'm sorry I stepped on it. I didn't notice that comment was in there. I was just going to follow up with that very same question about how do you keep people
the
interested.
timing was uncanny, Randy. Mark, if I could add too, so
Yeah.
my oldest son, who has since graduated from college, grew up here in Winston, did an internship with Landmark a number of years ago. And during that summer internship, the chamber, I believe, or sorry, Greater Winston-Salem Inc., brought a large cornucopia of interns in that were coming in the area to really talk to them about Winston-Salem and what it had to offer. And even though he grew up here, he was super impressed with the fact that that had happened and that there was a real effort to lure these interns back to the area to try and keep them here. So gold star, it was a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can call us the chamber. We still are a chamber of commerce. You can call us whatever you want as long as you call us. We still do that internship piece. We've added a little to it, Catherine. We, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we had an intern night at the Dash. So you partnered with the Dash, and interns from any business across the community, had free tickets and could come hang out and meet each other. We get to give presentation at Hanes Brands and Inmar to their interns. Internships, I'm very passionate about any work-based learning opportunity because I did it, and that's what got me in this direction. But it's also really helpful. And I always think there's two things you can learn. You can learn that you don't love that career, and that's really positive, or you can learn that you do love that career choice and go down that path. So yeah, Catherine, it's really about, that stickiness. Anytime we can, whether they're here as an intern or they're here for undergrad or grad school, the more we can have some connectivity to Winston-Salem, the easier it is to recruit them later on. And I think that helps all the businesses. Our goal is to recruit talent here that they work at all the businesses. But if you're a specific business watching or listening to this, you've got to be visual. You got to have, what does your space look like matters. What's your policy on hybrid remote work? Is it a fun place to go? Benefits, and salary. There's some really great salary studies out there that talk about, benefits and quality of life are now almost equal with what's my salary demands in a place. So there's a lot that goes into that. And I think it's really key to stay on top of that as you recruit talent.
Yeah, we're talking with Mark Owens, President, CEO of Greater Winston-Salem Inc., and Teddy is taking the day off. Catherine Perry, Executive Director with Leadership Winston-Salem, is joining as our esteemed co-host today. If you have comments or questions for Mark, drop them in the chat. Catherine will keep an eye on that. All right, so we talked about the people side of this thing. All right, fine. How do we attract talent? What about attracting businesses? What's the game plan for that? How's that going? And to the degree you can share, because I know there's some stuff going on. You got to keep under the radar for a while, but help us understand how you go about attracting business or keeping them here.
Yeah, I think it's a great segue, Randy. And every business is led by a person, so there's not a ton of difference in the approach, but there are some different nuances that change, right? So when we started back in 2020 in the pandemic, we had 12 active projects. As of yesterday morning, we have 72 active projects. So what is an active project? An active project is a company that has reached out through one of the varying channels, which are through the state of North Carolina. So they contact the state and say, hey, I'm interested in moving to North Carolina. They go through a site consultant. Think about a residential real estate agent. Think about that concept for helping companies move and find their next location, or a commercial real estate agent, or just directly to us and say, I'm interested in your community and what's available. Normally it's led through by land. Hey, we want a certain size building or a piece of land. If we have that, then we're able to engage in that conversation. That's when we count it as an active project. If they reach out and we don't have anything that fits, we don't count it. So these 72 are active relationships that we are cultivating and working and trying to sell on, hey, come to Winston-Salem and locate your business here. Same thing happens on the retention side. You got to know the business is here. We've had a lot of leadership turnover. Catherine can talk about that as well. In our big companies, a lot of new CEOs, a lot of new plant managers and leaders in the community. So you got to continually have those relationships and find out what are their pain points, most of which are talent, and what can we do to help on that. So on that attraction side, over the last 2 years, we've been able to attract and grow over 1,500 new jobs, and we're over $500 million in capital investment. That's money that is being invested in the community over time, which is adding to the tax base. So, Randy, we have been able to add over $1.2 million a year net to the city and to the county per year tax base. So year one was about $1 million. Year two was about $400,000. So about 1.2, 1.3 is how that netted out in terms of net new tax dollars to the city per year, as well as to the county. So we're adding to that tax base, which provides the city and county more revenue sources to provide services to our community, all the way down throughout different agencies, infrastructure, and hopefully keeps taxes low for our existing businesses that are here as well. So I'd say it's going pretty well. There was a lot of cash and demand that was kind of stored away during COVID. There was a lot of duplication of services, meaning, hey, I've got a supply area or manufacturing facility. I want to add another in case I have an outbreak of COVID. I want to be able to have some duplication. That's slowed down. So right now, that cycle of sales to close is anywhere from 6 to 12 to 24 months. I mean, it's a wide range, probably averaging on about a year's worth of relationship conversations before a company makes a decision. So it gets a little complicated, but it normally comes in from the state. We work with the state on recruiting them if they are interested in looking at other places. And then we really try to sell the community. It's not hard to sell the land and buildings in our community if we have them, because we're, again, back to our affordability concept. We're pretty affordable as it relates to other places, but you got to sell them on why we're better than XYZ community. And that's where most of our pitch takes place. In infrastructure, our road system, access to mountains, to beach, to airports, different things all play a part of that. And I'd say it's going pretty well right now. We're working hard on the entrepreneurial area. We've got a great focus there with our startup community. But from a recruitment standpoint, we should have a good announcement, hopefully early September. So stay tuned for that. That's probably, for those viewers that are here, here's a little nugget to keep an eye out for that coming up soon.
You had an interesting story another time when you were on about, I believe it was a police officer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you share that?
Sure. So, we had a company. Unfortunately, the company was bought. And so, a spoiler alert, didn't end up with their full presence here. Still has a presence here. But we had a company here that we were courting and trying to get to locate here. And they wanted to go to dinner that night by themselves and walk around town. And they just engaged in this with this police officer, Officer Jacobs, on the street, and ended up having an hour-long conversation with Officer Jacobs about what's Winston-Salem like, how is it safe, what's it like to live here, what's the racial dynamic, what's the community dynamic. And Officer Jacobs just spent almost an hour time outside of Mellow Mushroom downtown talking to this individual. Saw him the next day. Officer Jacobs was driving and saw the business client walking and rolled his window down and yelled him out by name. And this gentleman was from the New York area and was like, within a day, they already know my name and are saying hello and offering to give a tour and let me show you how safe the parking deck that your staff would be parking in. We have, he was just very hospitable. And so it was going so well, we ended up naming, a lot of our projects have code names. So we codenamed that Project Jacobs, after the officer. And they do have a presence here now, not as big as we originally hoped, but because of those kind of interactions, anybody's watching this, you may be talking to a stranger on the street or at dinner and be the best salesperson that Winston-Salem can have. Yeah.
I mean, they expect to hear it from you and your team. But,
right.
But when you hear it from a guy on the street, whether it's a cop or just whomever, it carries a lot more weight, that word of mouth. Hey, by the way, we're about halfway through today's show, Lunch with Randy and Teddy. We have as a special co-host, Catherine Perry with Leadership Winston-Salem. And our guest today, back for a third time. We get you on about once a year to get a good update. Mark Owens, President, CEO with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. And your office and your whole area there is under construction. I think you're upfitting. So he's not being lazy, folks. Just within a week or so, I think everything have to come down anyway. So, but we're talking about economic development here in the Winston area, some of the challenges we face, and how we stack up against other cities of similar size. So if you have comments or questions for Mark, drop them in the chat. And Catherine's got her hand up.
Fire away.
Actually, I was curious,
Yeah.
and I know that you might not be inclined to speak to this in this way, but I'm always curious, what is our biggest competition? I mean, I know that Winston-Salem is the best mid-sized city in the area, in the state, really. But what, based on what you've seen and the conversations you've had with people that are considering Winston and other communities, what is our biggest competition?
I'm going to answer that in two ways. It's a really good question. The first answer is whatever community has the building size ready that they need. So an example of that company that is here, still headquartered here in Winston-Salem, Pro Kidney, was looking at across for a building that was ready to go, that was 250,000 square feet, and they wanted to move in ready. We had already filled ours that was that size. So we had 125,000 square foot ready, and we had a 400,000 square foot building ready. But we didn't have one that was exactly ready for them to go. And so they ended up in Greensboro because they had a building ready to go. So anywhere, if a company has a really specific size need, that's who we compete with. With that said, we also, well, I mean, I can't dodge the fact that we compete with Charlotte. We don't run into Raleigh as much, to be honest. Yeah. There are companies that will have a significant presence here in Forsyth or consider their manufacturing operations distribution in Forsyth County, but maybe put their executive leadership team in Charlotte because they feel like they're supposed to do that because it's Charlotte. So we run into that a little bit. It's changing somewhat because of cost and affordability in areas, but Charlotte, we do run into from that standpoint. Outside of the state, Greenville, Spartanburg area, Birmingham, Alabama, we run against pretty often, and then some rural areas of Georgia, but most of it, if it's manufacturing, are coming from the Alabama side.
Gotcha. I know there's a comment in there. I'll have Catherine take a look at that if that's something you want to work in. But again, back on this whole, how do we attract businesses and so forth? Have you through your time there and in your time in South Carolina when you had a similar role, have you learned or developed or changed approaches? Has that process morphed? Maybe technology, has that helped? Or did you do things differently today versus when you got your career started? How does that operate?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've sharpened that up a little bit. But a few things that come to mind right off the bat are we have to be more personal than everywhere else. So Catherine, to your comment about competition, like we're not just a project such and such, like that's the biggest project ever. We will now, like the company moved into Innovation Quarter that has 2 to 5 employees. We treat that with the same amount of attention that we treat a 400 employee. Like every one of them is serious. Randy, some things that we do specifically is we're very video heavy, digital heavy. We have to show what it's like to live here. Zoom made it more challenging in my opinion. So I like when people are on campus, they're in our community, they can touch, feel it, see it, see what it looks like, see why it's amazing. It's hard to tell somebody that via Zoom. So videos and different things help to try to show that. But a lot of we had a pitch to a European company this morning on Zoom. So there are some really cool things that can happen via Zoom, but it's harder to get somebody to want to come in your community, touch, feel, experience what it's like. So we're looking into virtual reality. We do some different things with that. We mail custom boxes to different companies and site consultants that have, Texas Pete and Krispy Kreme and other local Hanes Champion sweatshirts, just local products here to kind of show off and differentiate ourselves. So you got to be really intentional. The the other part that I would say, and this is going to get really in the weeds, but you got to get ready with land. You got to have your land ready to go. And Winston-Salem is an older community. We've developed a lot of the land that's in the ridge line. So anything else that is new land that we would be able to develop is going to have sewer lift stations, which means gravity can't flow some of that water and sewer. That gets expensive. That plan is different. So marketing and selling wise, yeah, we do some things differently, a little more updated, try to be cutting edge, not as much print, but we're also on the development side having to be a little more creative than maybe some of our surrounding counties that are flatter and have a bigger geographical footprint. We got to do it a little differently in Forsyth County.
Catherine,
so let me read this question because I think it's from somebody who's a regular here. So of course we want our regulars to feel heard. The unexpected termination rates of behavior from companies have now lasted over 15 years, and the pandemic has crushed the concept of the future for a lot of companies. What is the response from the business community in creating job mobility so a newly hired employee can plan their own future?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Obviously, there's probably some backstory or experiences that go maybe with that question. What I would say is it's the economy and the just overall business climate is changing, and the pandemic changed it quickly, but it changed it even more rapidly beforehand as well with automation and different things. So what we tell people that are saying like, I really want to kind of control more of my future, there's a couple ways to do that. Number one, we always talk about upskilling. So Randy, Goodwill side for Site Tech, go find more skills, develop your leadership through Leadership Winston-Salem, develop as much skill set as you can, never stop learning in that. I think the change is happening is, where, hey, I've been in a company 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I'm going to be automatically promoted because of my longevity. Now it's being promoted by skill sets and different things, probably at a different rate than it was before that we're seeing. So skill attainment is still major. There are companies that have looked into some family-owned businesses that have employee ownership plans.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I'm super familiar with. I think Goodwill, Randy, you guys may have talked about that before, or there's employee ownership group in town that I can't remember the name of at the time, but there are companies that say, hey, I'm a family business. I want the employees to own it when I retire, and there are ownership opportunities for employees. So I think when you're choosing, in today's economy, the job seeker has a lot of power and a lot of negotiation weight in today's world in the demand aspect of talent. So choosing your employer and asking that question, what is my development plan and what does that look like? What does my career look like? I think at the start is really important. There are some companies that may offer, if they're hourly, may offer 10, 25 cents more an hour, but they're not going to give that upward mobility. So also having that patience of understanding a company that's willing to invest in their folks. So it's definitely challenging. It's harder when private equity is involved. A lot of companies that have private equity involved means there's an ownership group that only looks at it as an Excel spreadsheet. And that's much, much tougher when it comes to employee growth and mobility. So from a newly hired, I would just ask, what's my plan? What are my options? How do you invest in your current employees? And then always find ways to take those LinkedIn training programs, get involved in leadership, or continue to upskill and take advantage of the resources that are in the community.
Yeah, you mentioned about education and continuing to develop the skills, and I forget the exact figures, but our Winston is among the lowest in the country in terms of that upward mobility job wise. I mean, if you're born into poverty, you're going to stay there. Catherine, you could probably speak to that better. Maybe, I don't know. That's something that, we covered in Leadership Winston. And where I'm going with this is to say, okay, that's a problem. How can we address that? Because we have a big talent pool here that may be just severely underskilled. And so they're trapped in poverty. Help us unpack some of that. Catherine, Mark, either one.
I'll let Mark handle most of that question
Okay.
because I think he's got more of the resources available to him, but I can vouch for that figure. I believe that at last count, we have the third worst economic mobility rate in Forsyth County of all other counties in the country, surpassed only by two counties in North Dakota, I believe, that are homes to Indian reservations, Native American reservations. And I think those are the only two that are actually faring worse than us. It's a significant issue that we've been working with for a long time. And I know you just can't turn a battleship around on a dime. So to that, I know that Mark and his team work vigilantly to create opportunities for our population here in Forsyth County.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add too, and it's Catherine, you're right. Your figures are right. What I want to just continue to clarify for the listeners, that is not the entire county of Forsyth County. It is a pocket of our community, a relatively small pocket, but a big enough pocket. Any pocket's big enough, right? But sometimes when we hear that, it's like Forsyth County is the worst economic mobility county in the country. Other than those, it's not as a whole. It is in certain neighborhoods within our county. That's still a problem. So economic mobility is something we focus on. We do that through, Forsyth Tech has free tuition. Currently, we have programs to help try to keep individuals, young people in school with our senior academy dropout prevention programs that we've worked on for 22 years now, as well as it is an upskilling. It's an access to broadband. It's an access to transportation issue. It's a crime safety issue. It's a housing issue. There's not a silver kind of bullet that fits to solve that. It's a comprehensive strategy that must take place. And it also has the individuals in the neighborhood, providing change and stepping up and saying, what does that change look like? Everybody has a stake in this, and it's crucial. And so upskilling to me and providing people with the skill set, our viewpoint, and through the lens that we look at, and we partner with people like the Winston-Salem Foundation, Z. Smith Reynolds, KBR, United Way, all the other community associations you can think of. But we look at it through the lens of economic mobility. And our goal is to provide job opportunities and training and workforce, because we believe those jobs are the opportunity to change your path and to change your situation. So, Randy, when we partner with you in Goodwill, it's to try to help an individual find an economic path that they can better themselves and have a sustaining wage and find ways out of poverty. One of the things we talk about sometimes are the economic mobility ladder. What I remind folks are you can't skip rungs on that ladder and go straight to $60,000 a year. You got to have rungs to allow people to get on the ladder. If you don't have some of those lower rungs, people can't just jump up and get going. So we see job opportunities across that economic salary impact area as opportunities to get somebody who needs a starting point to start or to get back to that kind of workforce participation area. Going to work in a minimum wage job, not ideal, but show some opportunity to get into the workforce and then use that ladder to get up. That's an area that we focus on. So we look at it through the lens of economic mobility, but you got to have community development. One of the things we talk about a lot, you can't have economic development without community development, and you can't have community development without economic development. They have to go together. So you can't just have great businesses and neighborhoods and healthcare and other things fall behind. They all got to go together. And that's kind of part of why we try to call that out in one of our vision statements, is to be a more equitable community. We look at it through the lens of economic equity, but we are trying to charge and encourage our partners in this to be more equitable in their work as well.
And Randy, there are a tremendous number of nonprofits in our community. Well, there are a tremendous number of nonprofits in our community, period. But several of them are attacking this problem from a variety of different angles. When you think about Read, Write, Spell, that focuses energy around training volunteers to attack the literacy issue that we have. Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Systems is working diligently on the problem, on trying to help kids get food that they need on the weekends and during summer vacations, help our people eat. I mean, we just dress for success with training and providing clothes for women that are going to interview processes. So there are a lot of organizations that are working hand in hand with Greater Winston-Salem Inc. on that issue.
Good deal. We've got about 15 minutes left. Mark, as always, I want to have a takeaway or two as we get ready to close. I know we want to hit on the 2030 vision, and I think you just kind of touched on that just a little bit. So we'll get to that in a bit. I was very interested. The last time you were on, you talked about some of the advantages of Winston, and one was transportation and the drive time issue. When you talk about Charlotte, you talk about Raleigh, you're like, ugh, I don't want to go there. But here, talk through a little bit about some of the advantages. You talk cost of living, housing, transportation, healthcare. You take it how you want to.
Sure. I will. I'm glad you remember that. So some of our points are working here, Randy. But I won't be able to quote all the numbers, but our average drive time for an employed individual in Forsyth County is 22.4 minutes. We talk about it in terms of minutes, not miles, because we want people in Atlanta and Charlotte and Raleigh and all these other places to understand 22 minutes you are to your location of work is the average. Most of our folks realize if you have your own car in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, we kind of say it's a 15-minute city. So you can get a lot of places in 15 minutes. So 22 minutes means we're also having individuals drive to Greensboro, to High Point, and it truly is a regional workforce. There is a regional workforce component to that, which is why we use our combined statistical area number of 1.7 million people in our region when we talk about recruiting and the talent availability. So when we're talking to somebody in Atlanta and they're like, man, I'm in the car 4 hours a day, 2 there, 2 back, and I go 20 miles. I'm like, yeah. So not only is cost of living, it's cheaper, more affordable to live here. You're also getting time back in your day. You're getting time back with your family, time back to volunteer in the community, time to go on a walk on one of our 18 miles of connected trails. I mean, there's so many different things you get to do, and we lead with that connectivity. Now, we're not perfect. Our transportation system has to improve, our public transportation system. We've got some probably coming out in the newspaper either today or soon is conversations around funding of the Beltway, funding of US 52 improvements. We still got to fight for road improvements, but as it relates to connectivity, cost of living, we still, believe it or not, are a little more competitive than a lot of places we benchmark against in housing. We need more housing. We have a really big challenge and tight on the supply of first-time home buyers area. That's an area of tightness in terms of housing, but we still have more of our residents own their home by percentage than Charlotte and Raleigh do. So we have over 5,500 units of residential living downtown. So there are apartment options, but there are also still some options to own your home, which we believe home ownership is a path to economic mobility, upward economic mobility. So that's an area we focus on. But yeah, connectivity, quality of life, lifestyle, all of those things kind of play in, and drive time is, hey, if you can get home in 20 minutes, you got a lot more time in your day to do a lot of fun stuff.
Absolutely. We want to hit briefly on industry trends. Help us understand what's the future.
I'll go kind of quick on this. We still, industrial buildings, think of 100 to 150,000 square foot buildings that are used for distribution or light manufacturing, still by far and away the lead. More and more biotech life science companies are interested in Forsyth County. So biotech life science, healthcare, a real area of focus and a differentiator that we have with W Firm, Regenerative Medicine, and Innovation Quarter. So that's great. Office, we actually have 2 office projects right now, which is kind of rare to have that. Office is still really slow. People are moving, like us, into new spaces or different spaces, but not a lot of new office. I do think some of our major employers in the community are starting to really push back in the office and encourage or mandate that. And that's going to be really interesting to watch. One of the phenomenons that I think is happening across the country is the idea that you can get a job working remote for a company in DC, for example, and you're paid DC wages, but you live in Forsyth County. That's going to normalize. Like as talent and supply demand changes, that's going to normalize, and you may see regional kind of pay hubs come back in that remote work. But I think we're seeing more companies that were remote. Hey, remote employee, you can work remote 2 to 3 days a week, but I want you in the other 2 or 3 days. I think you're going to see more and more people kind of gravitate back to in person, maybe not 100% and forever, but I do think there's going to be a more connectivity to that in terms of that from an industry trend standpoint. We're also seeing, some people that were displaced had a business idea, and now a couple of years kind of fully past the pandemic, wherever we are in that timeline. But hey, I had this idea. I'm going to go open my dog grooming business. So I'm going to open my cupcake restaurant. Like you're seeing still more and more of those entrepreneurs and those small businesses poke up.
Gotcha. Catherine, you can look at that. If there's a question in there, we can work it in. But I wanted you to talk about the vision, this 2030 your Winston-Salem Inc. vision. Help us understand what that's all about and how that's coming along.
Yeah, we have 3 main goals in our 2030 vision that kind of highlight everything we want to do. We believe it's for our organization, of course, but we hope that it kind of charges and encourage our entire community, which are 3 things: to be the top mid-sized city in the Southeast. Catherine already hit on mid-sized cities, which is great. We say the Southeast, it's really hard for us to compare with somebody in Arizona or California. So we don't want to be Charlotte and Raleigh. We want to be the best Winston-Salem we can be, and we want to be a top mid-sized city. To do that, we've got to do a lot of things, but our next 2 points are equally important for us. It's to be a more equitable community and to be the best place to raise a family. We surveyed 100 people. 70 of those individuals said, it's just a great place to raise a family. That may mean something different to everybody. It may mean parks, recreation. It may mean access to healthcare. It may mean education. It may mean our 217 days of sunshine a year. I don't know what it means to people, but it does mean that it's a great place to raise a family. So we also know that means individuals that we want to target and cultivate are that 25-year-old and up that aren't on mom and dad's insurance plan or their cell phone plan anymore, that we are a value proposition. We're not the cheapest place in the world, but you have high value for the dollar that you have here. We do have a challenge with that 18 to 25-year-old, which I think maybe, part of what we're having the conversation in the chat is it's hard for a young person. There's commitment both ways, right? From an employer and an employee. And we're trying to build more opportunities in terms of job opportunities in our community so that young people can commit to the city and then say, if my job changes, there's more opportunity here in the city. We're starting to see location. This is a national survey done by a group called Development Counselors International, DCI, that said job seekers now are choosing the city that they want to live in and then finding the job at the same rate they're finding the job and then moving to the city. So if we can make our city an attractive place through our 2030 vision, then hopefully there are more job opportunities. So that individual that comes and works for one financial institution may gets laid off, job change. There's another plug-in place for them to work without having to change the city in which they live. That's part of our goal in our 2030 vision, but we got to do that for everybody. It can't just be for certain populations. It's got to be for our entire community. We got to have a rising tide lifting all of the boats in Winston-Salem, and we're really working hard on that. We try to lead in that way. And what's great about our community is we have all those wonderful organizations that Catherine and I were talking about that are committed to this and are going in the same direction. We've had a lot of leadership change over the last 3 years of our nonprofit community development institutions and even our education and for-profit industry. New city manager coming on board, a lot of change happening. We've got to continue to refocus and lead that direction going forward.
Yeah, and no path is necessarily a straight line, and things change, business changes, the economy, COVID, you name it. You guys have to pivot on a dime and do what you do. in real time. And it's easy to sit back and go, well, we could do this, we should do that. But ultimately, it's guys like you that make this thing run, to bring in the businesses. And as you look back, I mean, I saw the other day, it was a CNBC had come out with a survey about top states for business. So let's do a couple attaboys here real quick. What are a couple things that you can kind of do a little of that for your team?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It's exciting that site selectors, business facilities. Mm-hmm. There's been a couple of different groups that have ranked North Carolina as a top state for business. That's great. I want it to be Winston-Salem as the top place for business. So you got to start with the state being in there, and that gets us more attention. But it's really we want to do that as well. We've been named the number 13th best city in America to start a business. And out of that ranking, we were ranked number 1 for cost of starting a business. So on the entrepreneurial side, we're getting a lot of traction. We have a new investment fund called Whisper that's almost invested $3 million into startup companies just in the last year and a half. There's been over almost $100 million of capital invested and raised into startups since 2020 in Winston-Salem. So the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the startup community is really gaining a lot of traction in those areas. U.S. News ranked Winston-Salem as the 41st best city to live in America, I think it was up 14 or 15 spots from the year before. So there are things that are improving. We're excited to add local amenities like the Callidium that's getting Children's Museum and getting ready to open, Burriss Park opening, new restaurants popping up. So we work really hard on trying to tell the story of what's happening here so that these rankings can happen. But really, it's the businesses and the individuals doing it that are really making these rankings stand out. But the one I'm probably most excited about and watch is the U.S. News of Best Place to Live. Again, number 41, which I still want to get higher on that. But also, best place to start a business. I mean, we're that, Charlotte, Durham, Raleigh, Austin, Texas, Dallas, all those cities are on that list. And then there's Winston-Salem. And you're like,
yeah,
something's different here. We're the mid-sized city that's leading the way. And I love that when we can kind of punch outside our weight class a little bit.
There you go. Hey, we're getting shorter in time. You have a takeaway or two that you want folks to remember?
Yeah, I just, I always want to tell people that, as you mentioned, Randy, people expect our staff, our team members, our board members to talk great about Winston-Salem. But I just want to reiterate to those that are watching or will listen to this, you telling the story of Winston-Salem, sharing news, encouraging people to get involved, encouraging people to go through Leadership Winston-Salem or to do whatever they want to do in the community. You're the individuals that can really make a difference. You never know who's in your network. So when you see good news on social media, share the good news. Don't just comment on the bad stuff. Help us get the good message out there. Be the mouthpiece, be the advertising agency, if you will, for our community, and really tell the story. Because as much as we can put paid advertisement out, nothing is more important than that 5-star review that a citizen of Forsyth County and Winston-Salem can give to a friend, to a colleague, or to their social networks. Mm-hmm. That's the area that we really would love to have your help in. You can make a big difference on that. So next time you're at your family reunion, college reunion, traveling, if you want a stack of Winston-Salem magazines to leave in hotels when you leave different cities, those are fun things you can do. Get involved and find ways to do that. That'd be great.
Great. Mark Owens, thanks for joining us today. Catherine Perry, thank you for filling in for Teddy as today's co-host. Catherine's with Leadership Winston-Salem. Appreciate your taking time out during lunch to spend it with us. And Mark, again, as always, I appreciate you sharing the latest and greatest and some of the trends that we're seeing out there with business in our community. Again, next week, we got another good show. We've got Kevin Baker, Executive Director with Piedmont Triad International Airport. You ever wonder, how do you run an airport? And all of the, I guess I'll call it the economic development that goes around that. It's not just airplanes. It's all the suppliers of the aviation industry. And so all that economic ecosystem that goes on there, we'll learn a bit more about that with Kevin Baker. And that'll be next week. That'll be the last show. I have a wall calendar, by the way, you guys. So, I have something on my wall, Mark. It's a wall calendar because I'm old school. But Kevin will join us on July 26th, and we hope you will too.
And
Every
Randy,
week. Yeah.
Randy, I got to put a plug in for Kevin. Kevin is fantastic.
Okay.
Really don't want to miss Kevin Baker talking about PTI, but also the airport and the aviation industry in the region. Yeah. Kevin's one of those people that's a true team player, regional leader, and you're gonna have a lot of fun. I'm gonna try to tune in as well. We have a company coming to visit, Randy. So if I'm not on, that's why. But
okay, you mean you're gonna take that opportunity over ours? Come on, man.
I kind of have to, but hey, these are recorded, so I can go back and watch. So thank you.
Perfect. Again, Mark, thank you very much. Catherine, thank you once again. And thanks to the folks that have watched. We'll see you next week. And hopefully Teddy will be back. And if he's asking for a pay raise, it ain't happening, Teddy. So just let you know that. Hey, guys, thanks again. And folks, have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks, Mark.
Bye, everybody. Yep.